Hi guys, this is Miss Anderson. First thing I want to say is Happy New Year to you. As I write this video, it is the beginning of 2022. We are saying goodbye to 2021 and saying hello to a brand new year. I, for one, love the beginning of the year because it is a time for me to wipe the slate clean, put away all of the mistakes and things that I should have or would have or could have done, and then face forward, make new goals, make new plans, and try to improve myself. So I love the beginning of the year because it holds so much hope and so much promise, for the things to come. But let's go ahead and get started. So this tutorial is going to be a part of a series, okay? And it is a writing workshop, and the series is going to be on proofreading, revising, and editing. And so let me also go ahead and differentiate between my face-to-face students. So those are students that are with me in my English class on campus. And then I'm making this video and I'm placing it on YouTube also for my online students, okay? So for my students that are not with me face-to-face, you are my online students, okay? And so I'll be referring in this video series, to my online students and to my face-to-face students. So I just wanted you to know where you fit in that category, okay? And so this workshop, as I said, is going to be a series, so it's going to be more than one video. I don't know, this is the first video, so I don't know how many there are going to be, but I can tell you there should be at least 5, if not more than 5, okay? Now, if you look on the screen here, you see writing workshop, then you see proofreading, revising, and editing. That's what this workshop series is going to focus on, okay? So my instruction in the classroom, we have learned how to write a summary, we have learned how to write a constructed response, and we are working on writing essays. And so one of the things that I have found with my students is that, yes, I can teach you how to write, okay, because we've been doing lots of writing in class, but the skill that you are missing is how to go back and make your writing better, okay? That's the skill that this writing workshop is designed to improve. It's designed to improve how to proofread your writing, how to revise it to make it better, and how to edit it to make it the best that it can be, okay? So please understand that this workshop and this learning is just as important as being able to write anything, And so, but we'll get into the particulars in just a second here. Now, I do want to pay tribute, and I want to give my online students the document that I am using to teach from, okay? So on the screen, you see here, there is a website, okay, www.misd.net. And if you type that into a browser, no spaces, but make sure you have the / correct, then you will get to a PDF, okay? And that PDF, let me show you what it looks like very quickly here, okay? Because I have it up on my screen. Here is the PDF, all right? And the document is called Proofreading, Revising, and Editing Skills for Success. It is designed to be done in 20 minutes per day, and give or take a few minutes, that might be true, okay? So, but what you're going to do is follow this video, and this video is going to break it down per lesson. So I want to give tribute to the guy who wrote it, and he's a teacher in New York, and his name is Mr. Brady Smith. So I need to give all the credit for putting this information together, because when I went online to look for some aid, some resources that will help to teach my students how to proofread, I came across his digital book. Okay, this is his first digital book. Congratulations, Mr. Smith. I salute you as from one teacher to another. And so when I went through and read this book, I was like, wow, this is everything that I need, everything that I want to say to be able to teach these skills to my students. So thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Okay. So my online students, if you go to the web address that I have typed on the screen, you will be able to download a copy of this PDF. And you are going to need to do that because that is what I am going to be reading from as I go through this series. So on the screen, I probably won't have much, but I will have, and my students that are face-to-face, I'm going to print the copies that you need. I'll print the pages that you need so you do not have to worry. But for my online students, if you are watching through YouTube, you need to have that PDF of the document downloaded and saved to your device. And then you can print it, that's fine, but you really don't need to in order to go through this video series with me, okay? All right, so I think we are ready, okay? My face-to-face students have the paper copy in your hand, and you are just going to follow along with me. I'm simply going to read the document, then I'm going to editorialize, which means I'm going to give comments on it, and then we're going to just go through some examples if and when it is needed, okay? All right, here we go. So our objective, students, is for you to learn and understand the importance of proofreading, revising, and editing your work, okay? And so it's a skill that's it's a little challenging at first, but I guarantee you it gets easier and easier and easier, okay? I was taught the same thing when I was in school, and I thank the teacher to this very day that taught me these skills because now it is a habit, okay? And so these skills apply to all writing, every type of writing that you do, from a summary, a constructed response, or an essay, no matter if it's a text or if it's a dissertation, okay? We all should proofread. Before you send a text, you should never, I don't care how small that text is, you should never hit send before you look over it, revise it, and edit it to make sure that it represents what you want to say. So that is a skill, ladies and gentlemen, and it becomes a habit the more you do it, okay? Another thing that I want to mention, that in this video, I'm going to be pausing, or I'm going to allow you to pause, because we're going to break it up into like 15-minute breaks, or 15-minute learning spurts. And so after 15 minutes, then I will pause it, or I will tell you to pause it. You pause, stand up, stretch, walk around, get a snack, do whatever it is that you need to do, and then come back to the video, okay? Because if I make this video and it's 30 or 45 minutes long, I do not expect you, nor do I want you, or should you sit for that long and watch a video, okay? And so, because research tells us that our brain is only going to be attentive for like 15 or 20 minutes before we start to think about other things, okay? So remember, there will be pauses throughout the video to allow you to get a brain break, okay? All right, let's move on. I am excited. So now, if you are looking at the PDF, okay, and I'm just going to call it PDF, all right, I am on page 13, which is called the lesson number 1, okay? Lesson number 1, and it is understanding the writing process. And so one thing that I want to say is that if you are looking at the PDF, then you will see it has about 20 lessons in here. And so I'm not going to necessarily teach all 20 lessons. And so you will have to have the PDF, and I will mention it to you so that you can know which lesson to follow, okay? I won't have it on the screen. You'll just have to know that I'm speaking of lesson 1, which is on page 13, okay? All right, or page 25, Okay, it just depends on how your PDF, um, how your pages are broken down. Okay, but if you have it printed, then it's on page 13. Okay, so you're ready? All right, so you are looking at your paper copy or your digital copy. And so lesson 1 is understanding the writing process. So let's look at a summary of this lesson first, okay? So in this video or this lesson, in order to proofread, revise, and edit, you need to understand the writing process. From pre-writing to drafting, editing, revising, and writing a final draft. This lesson discusses the writing steps and then gives you strategies to help you write the best possible final draft. And so that's absolutely correct. And again, this applies to all writing: summaries, constructed responses, essays, research reports, narratives. It doesn't matter what type of writing you're doing. This process of proofreading, revising, and editing applies to all types of writing, okay? All right, here we go. Let's continue. The writing process has only just begun when you write that last word on your final draft. And I smile as I say that because that's the biggest challenge that students have. Students have a real big challenge in first getting your ideas down. Okay, so writing itself is a challenge for you. And so when you hit that last period, you're like, oh, finally. And you're like mentally exhausted, And so naturally, you think that is the end, that you're done. But unfortunately, and once you get into the habit of proofreading, you'll only see yourself as halfway there. Okay. This is where the work begins. Okay. Let me continue reading. It is in the process of revising and editing that the draft takes shape and becomes a crafted piece of writing. Writing is an art, and like any good artist, a good writer continues to work on a piece until it has its desired effect. So when you hit that last period, my fellow writers, my awesome writers, you're only halfway finished. So now you've gotten your ideas down on paper, and that was a struggle, and I applaud you for that. I give you all the dap that you need, because it is a challenge sometimes to get your thoughts down on paper, to write it in a way where people can understand it, where your audience is going to be, informed or persuaded or entertained. So I salute you on getting your thoughts down. However, I now have to tell you, okay, yes, you have your thoughts down, but now we have to go back and we have to make it better. Okay. So now if you look at the screen here, I have a photo of the writing process, okay, because we're going to be talking about the writing process. So I want to have a visual here for you to use, okay? And so these bulleted items correspond to our PDF, to our digital book, okay? So the first bolded subtitle you'll see is Prewriting and Brainstorming. Okay, let's go ahead. First, it is important to figure out what you know about a topic. Since many ideas come to mind when you begin to think about a topic, take the time to write them down. That is called the brainstorming process. When we write, guys, we have to take time to brainstorm, to just let our ideas flow. If you don't let the ideas flow, then when you go to write, you won't have anything to write about. So you have to take that time to brainstorm, okay? First thoughts are easily forgotten if they are not committed to paper. You can do this with the pre-writing techniques such as brainstorming, clustering, mapping, or listing. You can also use graphic organizers like charts, story maps, diagrams, and cluster-like examples on the next page. So in our classroom, when we pre-write, we use an outline. We also use cluster maps, and we definitely use graphic organizers. You have a graphic organizer for writing a summary with the 5 W's. You have a graphic organizer for using Racer to write a constructed response. And so we use an outline form of pre-writing for our essay. So you are already familiar with different types of ways to pre-write, okay? Which is really getting your ideas down on paper. Now, a couple other things I want to hip you to is the idea of taking verbal notes. I've mentioned this in class, but I can't express to you the importance of using a digital recorder on your phone, okay? When you have ideas that come to you, your phone is probably going to be with you wherever you are. Hit that record button and say, this is just an idea for my paper, or this is one of the details, or this is one of the, just write that, capture that moment. Why? Because we forget. We forget and we say we're going to remember, but no one ever does. So if you get into the habit of taking those notes, of writing down your thoughts, of keeping a journal, of letting brainstorming, using time, taking time to brainstorm, then I guarantee you will see the difference in your writing, okay? But if you sit down to write an essay and you haven't done this process, if you haven't done the pre-writing and the brainstorming, you're going to have a hot mess. That's what you're going to have, okay? All right, let's continue. Pre-writing can take place in all sorts of inconvenient locations, and you may only have a napkin, a piece of scrap paper, or an envelope on which to write. Just do not think a napkin with scribbles on it is the final draft. You still have much work to do. So what he wants us to understand is that no matter where you are brainstorming. No matter where you are, you can do the pre-writing step. You can take verbal notes. You can write something down on a napkin. If you don't have your phone, you can write it down on a menu. I've done that many times. Trust me, it works, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so if you're looking at the book, you will see that we have a web diagram, okay? And so discrimination in the United States, and then he has just, some links to some different topics or different things that he can write about. And this is just one of the many ways that we can brainstorm, okay? All right, so let's move on down. So we went through the pre-writing step of the writing process. Let's go down to drafting, okay? So I'm on the next page, which is page 14 or page 26 in the PDF. Drafting. The next step is turning those thoughts into a first draft. Those of you who skip the pre-writing step and jump right into a first draft will find that the editing stage takes more time than it should. Why? Because your thoughts are not in sync. You're unorganized. It doesn't have clarity. It doesn't have fluency. You're just talking about anything. And I've seen this. I see it a lot, okay? I know the difference, and you will notice a difference between writing that you've taken the time to do the first step, the pre-writing, and writing where you have not taken that time to do the pre-writing. You may even find that you have changed your mind from the beginning to the end of a piece, or that the first paragraph is spent getting ready to say something. That is fine, but be prepared to reorganize your entire draft. What that means, ladies and gentlemen, and what I have done and what I have actually asked my students to do is, if you neglect to do that first step in the writing process, that brainstorming and the pre-writing, meaning make an outline of the things that you're going to discuss, the ideas you're going to share, then when you go to do that first draft, okay, and now you come to the revising part where you have to proofread it and read it aloud to make sure it makes sense, it's not going to make sense, and you're going to have to end up redoing the whole entire draft. No one wants to do that. So you're making more work for yourself when you skip things, okay? And I know you guys, I'm sure you think that you're smarter than your teacher, and in a lot of ways you are. There are things that I am weak on that you are strong on, okay? But you have to just trust me when I say that the writing process, and especially if you want to have a decent writing, in which if you are college bound, and all of you are, then you have to have some good writing skills. So you cannot, and I'm going to keep saying that because it bears repeating, you cannot skip the pre-writing step, okay? Or if you do skip it, be prepared to do a lot more writing than you should have. All right, let's continue. Writing with a plan makes the entire writing process easier. Oh my goodness, just saying that I felt a lot better. Writing with a plan makes the entire writing process easier. Ah, imagine you are a famous writer of mystery novels. If you don't know who done it, how can you write the chapters that lead up to the part where the detective reveals the culprit? Meaning you have to know who did it before you start writing, not as you go. This is not a as you go type. Sorry. It is the same with your writing. Without an organizational plan, the paper you write may not take the right shape and may not say at all what it was intended to say. Hence, and the result is redoing the entire paper. You don't want to do that. You want to avoid that. So the lesson in this particular part of our tutorial, don't skip the pre-writing step. Okay, do not skip. Take the time that's needed to make an outline, to make a plan, okay, for what you are going to write. All right, so this is a good place for us to take a break, okay? So go ahead and pause the video and then walk around for a few minutes. Don't leave. Don't go to sleep. Don't go and have a big dinner or anything, but just take a break, stand up, stretch, talk to your peers, do something like that for a few minutes, and then come back. Okay, so now that you're back, we're going to move on page 14, okay? And now we are on revising as you go, okay? So the third step in the writing process is to revise, okay? And revision can happen it can happen while you're writing, and it can happen after you finish writing your draft, okay? Both ways are totally fine, and you should form a habit of doing it both ways, okay? So let's go ahead and talk about revising as you go. So that means as you are writing, you are revising, okay? And that's one of the things, remember how I taught you, some of you guys, when I gave you feedback, I said to read out loud your writing. Every time you write a sentence, you read it out loud. That's a part of revising as you go, okay? Because you're hearing it and you're making it sounds fluid, it sounds coherent, it sounds clear, and it's getting your point across, okay? Let's go. Revising as you go. Most writers revise as they write. That is why pencils with erasers were invented. If you are a writer who uses pen and paper, feel free to fill your first draft with arrows and crossed out words. So in my classroom, ladies and gentlemen, you know that we do not use pens. We use pencils, and that's for that reason, so that we can correct our mistakes. You may continue a sentence down the margin or on the back of the page, or use asterisks to remind you of where you want to go back and add an idea or to edit a sentence. So that is if you are using a pen. I suggest that everyone that's writing for academic purposes use a pencil. Now, if you're in the university, your teacher, your instructor might, or professor might want you to use a pen, and that's totally okay. If you use a computer to compose, use symbols to remind you of changes that need to be made. Put a questionable sentence in boldface or a different color so you can remember to return to it later. A short string of unusual marks like will also catch your eye and remind you to return to a trouble spot. Typing them may even relieve some of the tension that you are feeling as you struggle with your draft. Just remember that if you are planning to show your draft to someone, like a teacher or coworker, you may want to clean it up first. Okay, so yes, please. Oh my goodness, I just need to have a moment of silence. Please revise and edit your draft before you give it to me as your teacher to read, okay? I do not want to, or can I, and that's the purpose of this tutorial, is because it takes more time to give you individual feedback rather than it is to teach you how to revise your writing yourself, okay? So what I found when we did our last essay in class, and my online students, I'm talking to my face-to-face students. When I gave you that recorded feedback, guys, what I realized is that the time that it took to give just a few of you, and I didn't even reach all of my students to give you feedback. What I should have done and what I'm doing now, correcting that, is to teach you how to revise and give your own self feedback. Okay. So that's what that's the purpose of this, is to show you how to do what I was doing for you. Okay. And then I realized if I never taught you how to do it, then you would never learn. I would continue to be, revising and editing for you. And that's not a teacher's job. My job is to teach you and to show you how to do it for yourself so that you are capable of doing it. Therefore, you have the skills to do it. Okay. All right. Going back to our PDF. Okay. Computers also make it easier to make changes as you go. But remember that a computer's grammar check or spell check is not foolproof. Computers do not understand the subtle nuances of our living language. A well-trained proofreader or editor can. So what that means is I prefer you to always write your draft with pencil and paper, but you can type up your draft, okay? So if you have bad handwriting or, maybe even your hand. I had a student last year, he broke his wrist, okay? And so he couldn't write. He couldn't, his cast was covering his fingers and his wrists up into his arms, okay? So his fingers were sticking out of his cast. So he literally could not write. He couldn't hold a pencil in order to write. So he actually had to write his writings he had to type them up on the computer. So there is lots of advantages to writing your draft on the computer, okay? Research tells us that writing is thinking, the practice of the movement of writing, that helps your thinking process. So that's why I encourage you to write. However, if you are typing your draft, okay, that is fully acceptable. And what the PDF is telling us to understand is that, Microsoft Word, it has a spell check and a grammar check, but you can use it, but don't rely on it because it can make mistakes, okay? It can make errors and change your writing. And that's why there's no substitute for you as the writer to understand what you are writing, okay? All right, let's move on to proofreading, okay? I'm on the next page, which is page 15 or page 27 in the PDF under the subheading of proofreading. Ooh, the good part. Proofreading is simply careful reading. As you review every word, sentence, and paragraph, you will find errors. When you locate them, you can use proofreading symbols to shorten the amount of time you spend editing. It is an excellent idea to become familiar with these symbols. At the bottom of this page, you will find a few examples of the most common ones, but be sure to check Appendix A for a complete list. Of course, in order to find errors, you must know what they are. Read on to discover the culprits that can sabotage a good piece of writing. Okay, so what I'm going to do is show you what we are going to have face to face, okay? So what I have done is I have actually made us a proofreading document. Let me move it down here so I can have my subtitles there. So the document is called Proofing Marks and there's 2 pages to it. On the first page, this is for revising, okay? And so I'm going to show you, we are going to do some practice with using this document in the classroom. And then on the second page, it is the editing checklist, okay? And so these are all of the editing marks, okay, that you are going to use to edit and revise your own paper, okay? So we are going to take some of the writings that we have done before, and we're going to take some examples, and then we are going to check them against this checklist, and we are going to see how improvements can be made, okay? All right, for my online students, you can use the appendix at the back of this book, to do your revision, to do your proofreading, okay? Proofreading, proof means to prove something. It means to check something. So proofreading means that you are going to check it to make sure you have done the things that you're supposed to do. So if you look at these symbols, for example, in the book, you know, some letters need to be capitalized, some letters need to be lowercase, you know. So when we proofread, that's what we are checking on, okay? All right, let's continue on. Capitalization and punctuation. Okay, so correction. So since this video is at 30 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and stop it right here. And I'm just going to make a part 2, okay? So I'm going to stop at the proofreading. We just finished that. And I'm going to start the next video at capitalization and punctuation.